Well, another day at the Jell-O factory, where I work. Yep, I sure do love my job here at the Jell-O factory as chief foreman of expository dialogue. I started working here 5 years ago when... Oh no! The big one's hitting at the Jell-O factory, where I work!
Chief! Listen, Andreas, it finally did it! After all these years, it ripped itself a new one. It's cutting the cheese as we speak. I don't remember any of the drills. What do we do?
First of all, it's chief foreman. I started 5 years ago when...
Quick! Everyone under the chandeliers! Neck first, spines up!
I think it stopped. I've never felt anything like that in my 5 years of working here at the Jell-O factory, where I work.
Chief, we're safe.
What's that?
Oh, a pipe burst under where I was hiding, and then this guy, I'd never seen him in the factory before. He ran up and he urinated on my pants and he ran away. And then I wet myself.
Ew, I mean, what's that sound?
The Jell-O, it's alive.
Big one like that, this Jell-O won't stop wobbling for days.
And it shifted in front of the exit.
You stole my exposition, and I'll never get that moment back. Thanks. Anyways, it shifted in front of the exit, but I bet I can stop it if I put my hand on it and try to reason with it. You all don't mind if we have a temporary suspension of the sexual harassment policy, do you?
What policy?
Oh no! The Jell-O is sucking me in by the hand! I better put my foot on the Jell-O in an attempt to pry my hand free. That should certainly make the situation better.
Is the situation better?
Call for help! Call Bill Cosby!
He already used his one phone call!
Then call 911! That's the emergency line, you know!
Hello? Hello? H-E-L-L-O! Chief, are you okay? The jiggling stopped.
Put me back in.
What? But Chief, you'll die!
I'll live like I've never lived before. You don't know what it's like in there. Jell-O! As far as the eye can see. Which is not very far if you're looking through the wrong type of Jell-O.
Chief, come to your senses.
I own property in there. I had a yacht. You want to know what it was called?
Was it a play on Jell-O?
No, it was a play on yacht. Yada, yada, yada. I also watched all the episodes of Seinfeld in there. I had a wife and kids.
You have a wife and kids out here.
Yeah, but they're not made of Jell-O. I'm going back in. What? Why can't I get back in?
You could only enter the Jell-O realm when the Jell-O's been shaken by a giant earthquake. I learned that when I started working here 5 years ago.
Oh, no.
That's right. In the 5 seconds you were gone, I got promoted to your job.
No.
Look at me. I'm chief supervisor of expository dialogue now. Okay, you can stop looking at me.
I don't care. You can have this world. I'll trigger another earthquake and get back in.
Another big earthquake like that won't hit for another 150 years because of plates. Listen, I'm still new at this.
Well, then I'll see you in 150 years. Oh no, I was stomping when I should have been stamping. I hit the wrong fault. This one leads to Japan. The copyrighted roar of a public domain monster!
Welcome to LA Meekly, the podcast that'll have you saying Daniel didn't practice.
I never got my sides, okay? The courier never made it.
You got them. I'm looking at them. They're still in the package.
Are they notarized? I don't want to get served on accident.
Nobody was here to open it for me.
You've tried serving me so many times. I never answer mail from you anymore.
Special delivery for Daniel Zaffron. You're Daniel Zaffron.
Yeah, would you like an autograph?
Who am I, stupid?
Oh, hang on. Let me open this letter from you. You are Ed McMahon, and I've just won a trip to court.
I just won 2 Corvette. Oh, court vets. Nope, still got it wrong.
I won 2 court dates. You're Greg Gonzalez.
Goddamn right I am.
Look, have you
heard of cigarettes after sex? That's me.
I swapped them. I swapped out the Gregs.
What's up? You can touch my microphone a little bit? You just want to get close to me.
Just to be safe.
He's now moving the microphone away from me and turning it off.
Let me just be safe here. Let me just wrap this up. Let me just shut this down.
Let me just be safe here and turn this into a one-host podcast.
I don't want to accidentally record you talking. So what is it? It's March. Happy March Madness to everybody.
Happy March Madness.
How about Merch Madness? You can buy our shirts.
You better buy our shirts because Daniel's running out of room in his apartment for them.
They keep multiplying.
The milkman won't take any more.
Please. I can't afford milk, but I do have shirts.
You don't have to pay for the milk. Just Just don't make me take another shirt.
We sold a quarter of the shirts, so we figured we got to order more. And now I have 400 shirts, and I have to wear all of them every day.
I messed the order up. I should have got 4,000, but I'm stuck with 400 now.
Before we start hawking our shirts to you a little bit more, we want to announce that we're going to have another live show on April 22nd, which may or may not be Earth Day.
Pretty sure it's Earth Day. Earth Day is the 4th Thursday in every November, right?
Are we going by the lunar Earth?
According to the Aztec calendar.
Every day is Earth Day to me. I recycle, and I use felt diapers.
The show's going to be at the Comedy Central stage of the Hudson, where we performed before.
We've done a couple shows there. Yeah, it holds 100 people. Tickets are going to be free. Beware of parking. Yeah, you're going to have to. We'll have more information coming up and what exactly we're going to be doing.
Finish that thought. Sorry, I cut you off.
Which one?
Parking.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah, the restrictions in the area, in the residential area nearby, got a little tighter.
So you can all carpool. All of you can carpool.
Carpool, Lyft, bus, park by the Pack Theater, and pretend you're going to go to the Pack Theater. But actually come to the Comedy Central State of the Hudson on April 22nd. Lemon Lime Birds. I don't know.
Take an Ube. Yeah, so
take an emo to come see us at the Comedy Central Stage of the Hudson on April 22nd. Earth Day.
Every day is Earth Day. Like I just said 4 seconds ago, we'll have more information on how to get tickets and all that stuff.
Just save the date now.
Save the date. Mark your calendar. We sent out the save the dates. It's me and Greg holding each other above the ocean, floating above the ocean.
Floating above the ocean, as we always do when no one's looking.
When only God is watching.
God in the moonlight.
Between you, God and the moonlight.
And that dastardly moonlight, which is every song from the 20s.
I also want to give a big... this is a new segment I call shout-outs. I'm coining a phrase here.
SOs?
Yeah, I'm really PO'd here. I'm going to give some POs. We kind of retooled a little bit our Patreon levels, and one of the things is now going to be if you join at any level, we'll give you a little thanks at the beginning of the next episode after you sign up. But for all the people who had signed up before and never got to hear their names ever spoken before, because I assume your parents never addressed you, which is why you listen to us. So I want to say their names right now who we have supporting us on Patreon: Amanda Anderson, Andre Lopez from Portugal. Speaking of the Mayan calendar, he put an end to that. Bruce Babcock, Chris Myers, Cindy Zachney, David Cheney, David Kahn.
Say both.
David Kahn, different person. Elizabeth Amador, Emilio Uranga 3, Aaron Sprague, Joanna Linkhorst, Joanna Linkhorst. Jordan Tickton, Oscar Prado, Ray Camacho, Shea Viti Tao.
Thank you all so much.
I don't think I've said most of those names out loud before. I just write them over and over on postcards. Yeah. I probably mispronounced all of them.
I could spell them drop of a hat. So easily.
VITIT. Enter address.
I'm at the post office. I'm at the counter, and I forgot to address all of these. So I'm just trying to knock it out before I have to get back in line.
The line keeps getting bigger. But no, I make them wait. I'm going to write all these postcards with 400 people in line behind me and one very underpaid person.
Looking at that underpaid person, like, do you know anything about City Hall? Can you help me out fill this joke in?
What rhymes with Garcetti? Quick. I know you have a thesaurus.
Barcetti. Oh, there it is. Farcetti.
Garcetti Blues.
Pharmacy.
We got it. Friday Night Garcetti's. So, yeah, we wanted to thank those people. If you join us on Patreon for any amount of money, we will also say your name, and we'll probably mispronounce it.
Yeah. So how will we mispronounce it next time?
Will we mispronounce your first or last name? So let's talk about us again. What did we do in the last February?
Me and my girlfriend peeked into Angeles National Forest on the Crest Highway finally. We didn't make it that far, but hopefully next time. I took a picture with Smokey the Bear cutout. That was lovely. One of the highlights of my life.
Always meet your heroes.
Something I have been doing as of the last couple of days. We addressed that on some point. Someone asked I think it was Joanna asked the question if we can
Joanna Linkhorst.
Oh, the very same from our Patreon.
Address.
I was asking if we do a podcast not in LA, what we do about, and I picked Disneyland as my number one. There's a podcast called The Backside of Water that only covers Disneyland, like the history of like the lands and then the rides, and goes through the company and then the history of just like the area as a whole. It's a really good podcast. It starts off, I think they changed hosts at some point, but when it starts off, it's very LA Meekly. It's very kind of riff heavy with history, and there's some sketches and stuff and voices. So anybody who likes us, who wants to hear about Disneyland at some point.
We don't do voices. We do characters.
You're right.
We don't do voices. We inhabit personas.
It's a very good podcast, and I think you'd like it too if you didn't hate Orange County so much.
I can't help the way I was raised.
I can't help the way I was raised.
Hey, a special SO to our Disney employee listeners that we've been hearing a lot from lately.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Don't forget to stretch your back, because I know you guys are probably hunched over a lot. Posture is important.
Yeah. You don't want to get goofy shoulders.
Yeah, you don't want to get mini back. You don't want to get Pooh Bear back. It'll happen if you're slouched too much, so stand up.
If you develop a severe case of elephant from Tarzan elbow, you might be a redneck. And there's my voice.
What did you do in the
last? Yeah, I was ready to move on to the rest of the episode.
Okay, first of all, we need to address that you had your first beer today, and you're not handling it well.
I don't even want to go along with that joke because I don't want people... I have young people looking up to me on this podcast. They all work at Disney.
When my family hears this in 15 years, I don't want them to find out that I had a beer once.
You're still making it seem like I had a beer. When in reality, I had cold chicken from Ralph's.
From your pocket.
And a Red Bull that I didn't pay for. This is something I did in the last month. It was actually in Los Angeles.
Not in Japan.
Well, actually, it was
Little Tokyo.
It was Little Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
I was going to pick a particular thing from Little Tokyo because we went one day and we got tickets to the Japanese American Museum. The main event was that we wanted to go to this one restaurant that served this thing that we really liked. Melissa never had it, but I really liked it. And Melissa goes where I say we go. She eats what I like, which is cold chicken from Ralph's.
From my pocket.
But we built a whole day around going to this one restaurant, which is, I have no idea. It's like chimney. It's like...
Is that you trying to say it right, or that the whole name?
No, that is the whole name.
Okay. Was it in the outdoor plaza?
Yeah, it's right where that like red tower is, but it serves okonomiyaki, which is this like noodle egg sort of thing. But anyway, we went to the museum, which was very good and depressing, and then we went to the restaurant, which was the embodiment of the food of the Hiroshima bombing, which is a long story, but if you go to the museum, you'll understand.
It sounds weighty.
So was the meal. And the bill. I got mochi at Fugetsu Do, and then we saw like the hidden temple that's right behind the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
There's like this little passageway, and then we went to the Japanese supermarket and we got like Japanese foods, and I got a little mold to make sushi triangles, which I have yet to do because Melissa keeps telling me I'm trying to use the wrong type of seaweed. I'm saying I got it straight from the ocean. It's covered in fleas.
I face my fears to go into the ocean and pull out seaweed because I would refuse to pay for it.
Now eat this. Eat this festering piece of rice that I made.
You come back Quint from Jaws.
You don't know what I saw.
Seaweed comes out of the ocean. I love that area so much, and I can never remember the names of the restaurants that I go to. But every one of them has been like stellar in a different way. All
the places I've gone to have been really good, and they have such specific types of food at different restaurants. But being back in the States after my long time away in big Tokyo,
relearning English after 2 weeks is real rough.
I really went native, and I'm applying for a bunch of scholarships now that I couldn't before. It's just a fun place to be. There's a lot of interesting things. You can easily spend a day there eating a lot of good things and seeing a lot of interesting things.
That's one of my favorite places to find myself because I'm like, the Arts District is to the left. Behind me is Union Station and O'Vera
Which is where
Street.
I parked.
Arts District?
Arts District.
Probably the best place you're going to get parking. Best place you're going to get parking is home when you take the yellow line there, the gold line, I mean.
Best place you find parking is when I have to drive to Pasadena to take the gold line there.
But then you have like Union Station, O'Vera Street behind you. You have downtown ahead of you. To the right, you have also downtown. But you're just like near a part of town where you can just, if you have good shoes on, can go anywhere you want.
If you're just walking around, like it's not that big of an area, but we were there for 6 hours or something.
It's very dense, yeah.
There's endless things to do. There's the underground smelly cave of dorks or whatever selling
Gundam.
The Gundam district. And, there's just a lot of things that are all little tastes of Japan, and it's a lot of interesting things. I wanted to pick just one. Like I could easily have just been like, the Japanese American Museum is really interesting. You should go. But this restaurant is also really delicious, so you should go there. And this supermarket has a lot of really cool things. You should probably go there. So I just picked it all, and it's all mine now.
I remember walking around one day and seeing Matt Groening, and I felt like
was he in Gundam Alley?
I remember feeling like Violet Beauregard when my body just inflated as he walked by, almost like I was ready to hug him, but I was just so full of like
raspberry juice.
It's blueberry. You know it.
Well, she did turn violet. So I think that's the color of raspberries, not a blueberry.
He was hysterical.
Checkmate, Roald Dahl. She was hysterical.
Her dad was hysterical. She wasn't doing great.
They weren't thinking straight.
Oompa Loompas aren't helping.
They were doing their job. They were doing exactly what they were brought there to do, which was de-juice a little girl.
Are we ready to start?
Yeah, let's start. We're going to do the listener question at the end, so stick around for that. But this month, hey, what are we going to be talking about?
Something that was so stressful to do research on.
Rumble in the jungle.
Rumble in the jungle.
The concrete jungle.
Urban rumble in the urban jungle. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of earthquake anxiety, and doing research for this episode on earthquakes was not really helping any of that.
I don't think about it that much, but when they do hit, like we were talking about, because we were talking about the lengths, and if an earthquake goes more than like 4 seconds, I start thinking like, well, I'm dead now.
Yeah, how is my family, whoever survives in my family, how are they going to afford my funeral because I'm about to die right this
and I'm going to be all over the place. splattered all over the place.
Yeah, I'm in an old house with a cellar underneath us, and I keep thinking the roof's going to fall on me. Me and the roof are going to fall into the cellar, and I won't be found for 4 years.
And then the hail will fall on the cellar.
Baxter Street will fall on top of me.
Our building just got retrofitted, and still
More
like
screws.
I don't. Yeah, re-oil those screws. It's retrofitted. There's no way that my building is going to stand in an earthquake.
Yeah.
It's right along the river. It's made out of pretzels. It's not going to work.
It cracks under high winds.
I kept thinking also, like, what if it hits? What if the big one hits
While
we're recording it?
Yeah.
We'll be savants. People will worship us. The survivors will worship us.
Are they fracking? Is that how they know when it's going to hit?
Yeah, we're fracking incredible.
I'm going to cover 2. You're going to cover 1.
Yeah.
The one in Fort Cajon was in 1857, and it was a big one. It was like, 8 on the Richter scale, whatever they measured back then.
Yeah, that was a really big one.
It was like...
Well, that was
triggered by the
San Andreas.
Yeah, that was triggered by the San Andreas, which my 2 weren't. Were yours? Was yours?
No, mine has nothing to do with the
So,
San
like,
Andreas.
there was, like, a couple of that era of Los Angeles, but because, like, you're going to knock down my
Exactly.
one-story
I read
thing.
a quote of, not Charles Loomis, but, like, one of those early LA white boys, and it was the big one hit. And they're like, yeah, at around 10:30, it shook a little bit, and then we had lunch. And then at about 2, it shook a little more.
Well, darn it, my papers fell off the desk.
Oh, no, my quill seems to have rolled out of place. But yeah,
I woke my horse up.
What's going to happen? Like, you're going to just throw some more Adobe on your Adobe and you're set. Like, there wasn't too much to damage.
Yeah, really.
Although I'm sure the stuff that was there, like, just turned to powder.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Not a huge deal when you're living in one-story things, mostly outside. And
not a big deal at the time. But let's start. We should probably
We
should probably give a trigger warning. There's a lot of death in mine.
I was going to say the same thing. There's a certain point in mine where you might want to listen.
Yeah.
We'll warn you again. We'll try to warn you again.
Yeah. I got to a point where mine, like, I can't fit any jokes anywhere in my thing because I'm terrified of this sort of thing. And I'm reading about people who should have been terrified.
When have you ever, though?
When have I ever what? Say it into the microphone. When have I ever what?
When have you ever kissed me?
Turn the camera on. Right now. Webcam that you made me buy.
Put that kiss cam on.
Let's get started with all the jokes.
Let's get physical.
There's a fault line known as the Newport-Inglewood Fault. According to the California Department of Conservation, the Newport-Inglewood Fault extends on land for about 46 miles from Culver City to Newport Beach, and from there continues into the Pacific Ocean where it joins the Rose Canyon Fault that runs closer to San Diego into the ocean. In our area, LA County, the line of hills that stretch from Signal Hill to Culver City are the surface level extensions of that fault. That's where you can see the fault.
That's why those hills are there.
Exactly. I got scared. I'm like, oh no, those are dangerous.
Don't shake them. Don't kick them.
For all the nerds out there who understand this part of the Newport-Inglewood Fault, it is a right lateral strike-slip fault with a slip rate of 0.02 inches per year. Wow. Oh, man. Is that a slip rate?
Turn the kiss cam on. I'd like to kiss that fault. Sexy.
I was watching a video. I watched a lot of videos trying to understand earthquakes better. There's a guy with cheese with a graham crackers that breaks it down pretty good, but I still like, but how many layers of earth are there?
But how many bites until we're all destroyed?
Right lateral, I guess they move in opposite directions, but they're kind of parallel to each other, like they side against each other. And people will like describe earthquakes and everyone's like,
bumping uglies? You're saying
are they cousins? What's the expression I'm forgetting?
I think we should do a DNA test on this fault lines.
They're related. On March 10th, 1933, at 5:54 p.m., 3 miles off the coast of Huntington Beach and about 8 miles below the ocean, the deep part of the ocean.
Robert Shaw's back.
The Newport-Inglewood fault line ruptured, causing a 6.4 magnitude quake. Lots of areas were hit hard by this: Culver City, Inglewood, Gardena, Compton, Signal Hill, Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Anaheim, Santa Ana, and Fullerton. But the brunt of the quake landed on the lap of Longbeach. This is a story of the 1933 Longbeach earthquake. For this, I consulted loads of newspaper articles, KCET, the California Conservation, and a book by Tom Grobatti called Longbeach Chronicles from Pioneers to the 1933 Earthquake. Ends there. So the morning of Friday, March 10th, 1933, in Long Beach,
March 10th, that's coming up 9 days after this.
I thought about that. I'm like, I wonder if it's going to happen again, because we evoked it. We
did the ritual.
I looked up that article in KCET. That article, like I was saying, March 10th was going to be a big deal in Long Beach. Was going to be a Longguido was going to be a big deal in Long Beach. Jesus Christ.
You know it's called Long Beach, right?
Oh, no.
Longreach.
My research all wrong. I messed up again.
This takes place in a different part of the world, in Longreach.
Okay. It was going to be a big deal because they were 2 days deep into the USS Constitution, a.k.a. Old Ironsides.
I thought you were going to say we were 2 days deep into the biggest Jenga competition.
They haven't knocked it down yet. It's literally just 4 more Jenga.
4 more Jenga.
So there was a ship, Old Ironsides, the USS Constitution, a ship that was launched to sea when Washington was president. This ship was docked at Longbeach Inner Harbor. So
wait a minute, isn't that still there? What's the one? No, that's the Iowa.
Yeah, that's Iowa.
Okay,
that was not launched when Washington was the president.
Old Ironsides? That's literally made of
steel,
iron?
Yeah.
This certainly was the land of good and plenty, or whatever they called it.
They used all the steel they could to make one ship. No bullets, no guns.
We shoot
no
this
bridges.
at them.
Today was the day that all the school kids, thousands as said, got a field trip to see Old Ironside. Almost all the kids came out and donated. Hello.
I'm Old Ironside. Those are our voices.
Prepare to be boarded, said all the kids in Long Beach. So all the kids came out and they all donated pennies towards the ship's refurbishment.
Which were also made of iron.
Yeah, also you had to swallow them. I don't know what the deal was.
Ironside wants more iron. Smelt it down for our iron god. Old Copperside.
Yeah.
I think I've been on, that's now in Boston Harbor, I think.
Probably, yeah.
I think I've been on Old Ironsides.
Did you donate a penny?
No, I took a penny. They say take a penny, leave a penny. I took the whole boat.
$9,000. My pants were so heavy.
I think I hit my head on below deck.
And you woke up and it was 1951.
I don't think I had that same thought.
And I also spoke French I had a French accent like Fred Flintstone every time he hit his head. And I also had amnesia. You hit your head on
blue.
You hit your head on Old Ironside?
No, it was a wooden part of Old Ironside,
okay.
so it wasn't that. No, I don't mean to pull back the curtain. It's made of wood. It's completely wooden. I think he's called Ironside because they shot him so much. It's like lead belly. His belly's not really made of lead. He has a piece of lead in his belly.
What? I can't be in his fan club anymore. I thought this was something else. So whether the kids liked the ship or understood its historic qualities or not did not matter. Many of the kids of Long Beach and the surrounding areas were happy that it was just a field trip day. Mm-hmm. So it was like already a good day to start. In 1933, Long Beach was a sleepy little oceanside town. It was growing, but still small with a population of about 157,000 people. It was just like 30 square miles at the time. There were like main streets and piers to the north and south, but Long Beach seemed to just have like long roads of nothing, like agricultural.
That was the alternate name.
No, it's going to make people not want to move here. A lot of farm.
And they never did.
Still empty to this day. Don't check it out. Please don't bother the people of Long Beach. Lots of like farmland and agricultural areas. Less than half the roads at the time were paved. Long Beach had 13 banks, about 28 schools, and Long Beach had 5 hospitals with 492 beds altogether, which on an average day was more than enough. But March 10th was not going to be an average day. It was late in the day already, coming close to 6 p.m. Ooh. Kids were home from school. Parents were driving home or stopped at supermarkets, or they were home cooking. Some were still at work. It was going to be a quiet, eventless night. But 5:54 hit, and the Newport-Inglewood fault line ruptured. The 6.4 magnitude earthquake lasted, most will say, like about 10 to 11 seconds.
You want to count them out? Like,
you ready to count it out?
Let's count out this is how long. Imagine shaking for this long. I'm going to look at my watch.
Okay.
You want me to count? You want to look at my watch?
You count.
Okay.
I'll count for yours, you count for mine.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's shaking. You're shaking that entire time.
That is a 6.4 earthquake shaking for 10 seconds.
Imagine somebody shaking your Model T for that long.
Your limo for that long.
Imagine. They're all trying to get your autograph. So what does Old Ironside have to do with this? Was that just context?
It was context for things that were that was happening that day.
Okay. So Old Ironside felt this.
Funny enough, the next day, split. It was supposed to be for 10 days.
No thanks.
3 days into it was like, ugh, boy.
I know I'm a boat and this probably doesn't affect me
at all. A little splish splash.
See you in Boston? Watch your head.
Yeah, it was just context for like the kind of mood of the day.
Okay. It was a field trip day.
In that 10 to 11 seconds, absolute chaos. Here are some of the stories from Long Beach Chronicles. A man named James Brody, the assistant manager of the Imperial Theater, which was on Ocean Boulevard near Long Beach Boulevard, ran out to calm the crowd inside the movie theater. He was on stage and in those 10 seconds managed to clear out the audience, getting them to stay calm and exit safely. He made sure everyone was safe and was the last to leave. He was killed by a falling canopy. He was 29 years old.
Like a marquee?
I think like I don't know if it's a marquee or an awning.
Either way,
he did not make it through that one. On 4th Street, absolute hero. Saved all those people in the theater. On 4th Street, Frederick Borum Cole, who was 61, grabbed his granddaughter and wrapped her in his arms during the quake. They were found under a pile of rubble that used to be their house. She lived, he didn't. A 3-year-old girl, Dolores Marie Mitchell, was killed, crushed to death on her stairway to her house on Anaheim Street. On Ocean Boulevard, there was a brick building that was a home to a poultry shop run by Vera Rogers and her husband. When the S word hit the F word, she fled the shop and then she ran back.
She fled.
You figured it out.
She fled, he fled.
So she runs outside, and then she remembers, my husband's in there. She goes back in to save him. They made it out safely, but outside was the problem. It rained bricks down on them, and the whole building crumbled, and they both died on the sidewalk. A high schooler, Tommy Guillermo, who was 16, died when the roof of the locker room that he was in at San Pedro High School collapsed on him. There are 51 stories like this. 51 stories 51 in Long
people
Beach.
Die, or how many?
120 deaths altogether, all over because of the earthquake. But in Long Beach, there was 51. That's where they got the worst. In Compton, also saw a lot of damage. They got about 17 deaths there. Part of the issue with Compton was that much of the area sat on ancient water-saturated sediments deposited by overflows from the Alley River. So there's just like, you're just on
liquefaction. I talk about that a little bit.
Remember liquefaction, but basically
that's the word of the day.
So it was 1933, and this was the first truly big earthquake of modern Los Angeles. And let me tell you, they were not ready for it. Building codes at the time did not factor into earthquakes, really. So many buildings were made out of bricks with wooden beams and cheaply made walls. So when that
not even like plastered together.
I know,
it's stacks of bricks.
Just like hope keeping them together. So when a 6.4 shaker hit, which is not strong, it's strong but not devastating. Everything came apart. If you managed to walk away from the 11-second initial hit, you had 34 more aftershocks to shake your house loose from its foundation. The first one hit at 6:09, 6:10, 6:12, 6:15, all the way to midnight. There's a story in the LA Times where a man recalls going to his family's mortuary, and during the cleanup, there was an aftershock, and it shook the sign loose, and it fell and crushed their mechanic's foot off and pretty much severed it.
Ew.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, like, all of the coffins opened up.
Yeah. All the schools pretty much suffered significant damage. There's a photo of Franklin Junior High pretty much collapsed. The dome at Poly High crashed to the main hallway. Jefferson High totally caved and collapsed and burst into flames. They said if this had struck during school hours, the casualty would have been in the thousands. 120 schools in and around Long Beach were damaged, and 70 of which were completely destroyed. Balconies and overhangs just flung off of their structures. Pillars that were installed to add support just buckled and allowed roofs to collapse. The entire northwest corner of the Ebal Club was in rubble.
What?
The Ebal Club, which is
like Ebel?
Oh, is it Ebel?
The thing that's downtown?
Yeah,
Ebel?
yeah. The Long Beach chapter, the Ebel Club. Thank you.
I don't know. Could be Ebel. Is it a Patreon person? Because if so, then we're probably mispronouncing it.
They should give us money to mispronounce it. Ebel, we're looking at you. The Bank of America and the post office on 7th and Redondo completely came down. Fires erupted all over the city, but the fire department would be a little late because the main station had been destroyed during the quake. All over the area, streets were filled with debris and telephone poles. Telephone poles were just knocked down and in the street. Telephone lines were out all over the city. Cars were buried. There was no electricity. A hero of the city was a gas company employee who shut off the gas lines during the quake and probably saved so many lives. After the quake...
And how was he punished by the earthquake like all the other heroes were?
He fell into a big hole.
He survived it all, but he was the final victim of Old Ironside.
He jumped on the ship and the ship sank. The ghost of Washington shot him with some dusty old bullet from a gun that only shot one bullet. It was shot more powder than a
wooden bullet. Never lied. His aim was true.
1,831 homes were destroyed. 21,000 homes were damaged. Cumulatively, the 11-second earthquake caused over $50 million in damages. $50 million during the Great Depression. Yeah. Which was $50 million
nobody had.
Ooh, geez. Ooh, boy. I hope you guys living around a lot of
we win World War II.
Which you'll find out in a couple of years what that's about.
Better get to Hitler's eagle nest first to steal those silverware. We got to make some money.
Rumors started to spread during the chaos. People were hearing stories that Point Furman in Pedro, which we talked about in the Haunted episode, had crumbled and fallen into the sea. Not true. People were hearing that Catalina disappeared into the rumble of the ocean. Not true. News was spreading that a tidal wave was on its way, and some people even later were like, I heard Long Beach isn't even there anymore.
And they couldn't prove it.
You want to go to Long Beach? I don't have a boat. The earthquake shattered people's lives, but luckily help was on the way. The man in charge was LA County Sheriff Eugene Bizcaliz. Bizcaliz?
Bizk... What?
Bizcaliz. Bizcaliz.
How do you spell it?
Biscailuz. I don't know. Okay? I read names from 1933, and I'm supposed to know how to pronounce them. I'm sorry.
I'm supposed to treat them with humanity?
Eugene Bizcaliz was on the way. Only a few years earlier, Bizcaliz developed a new division of law enforcement known as the California Highway Patrol. He also had a long, interesting family tree that involves a mission soldier for the San Gabriel mission. We won't hold that against him. Bizcaliz was getting word about how bad the damage was in South LA, in particular Long Beach, but he couldn't reach anyone for comment. Like all the telephone lines were down, so he didn't really know what to do.
I mean, it's not that far in 1933.
It's really not.
You could drive there.
Anyways,
I bet a giant caterpillar destroyed it.
I heard that Catalina is now on top of Long Beach.
I think we're New York now. I better retire.
So he contacted his pilot friend, a man named C.N. James, or Jimmy James, who was vice president of operations and an early day pilot for Western Air Express, which is now Delta Airlines. James and a deputy sheriff hop in an open cockpit plane to fly over the area and assess the damage. And surprisingly, he commented there was little to no fog set in Long Beach, which was an anomaly apparently. They were able to get as low as 100 feet off the ground, and they could see bodies being collected at service stations. They saw a couple of small flyers blazing, and the plane had no radio, so he had to drive the plane. He had to fly the plane to meet Biscola's at the Burbank airport, and then reported what he saw there.
Did they know what earthquakes were?
You know, from the amount of earthquakes that happened, I don't think they really did.
It's almost like they're treating it like a nuclear, not that they knew what that was either, but like a nuclear bomb had just gone off. They're like, we can't go there. We'll get earthquake poisoning.
This was the first big one. Like there had been other ones, but like this was the first devastating one.
Did they think like, we can't walk on it, it's gonna crumble?
It's 1933. How many people had cars? Were they going to take a trolley over there?
You'd think the sheriff has a car.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I mean the
Take
30s.
a paddy wagon over.
Maybe Mary Pickford can pick me up in her sedan.
Have Amelia Earhart fly you.
Yeah, they must have had
gone already.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think of the history of cars and where they landed in the 30s, and I only think of jalopies full of. It looked like the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, the Keystone cops were sent in to survey the damage.
They had cars, but I think they were smuggling booze with Tommy guns. I'm trying to think of like where we were in the 30s and where cars were. I don't know why he didn't drive over there, but he had a plane go over to assess the damage. Biscola's was so impressed with the help that James was able to give him in this that he developed a system of disaster aid with private pilots flying their own planes to help in search and rescue, and later became the Aero Bureau, which is an awful name. So hard to say. Red Cross chapters in the LA area rushed to the rescue with the help of the Army and the Navy, and they were able to start putting relief tents and beddings for thousands.
Send in old Ironside.
We need help from a boat from 1764.
Fight thunder with thunder. Shoot the fault line.
So first aid stations were established because of the Red Cross all over Long Beach and Compton. They were able to become basically like, because so many hospitals were damaged, they became like where all the emergency and first aid areas were. In Compton, a first aid station was set up with 689 nurses. In Long Beach with and the wartime nurses, so like dresses and heels, and you're like, are you sure you should be? Do you want PJs on? Because that seems very uncomfortable.
Keep her away from me. She doesn't have lipstick on. She's not rouge.
It's not form-fitting enough. Stay away from me. You're supposed to inspire hope.
Have a milkshake and then get back over here, skinny. Well, you know, my grandma was a nurse. She was a nurse in the 30s.
Oh, yeah?
In like the late 30s at Bellevue in New York City, and the whole thing was like, you've got to look good. You gotta weigh this amount of like
she works one of the counters at
like at Clinique counter, but like they would send her, you got to go down to the cafeteria and you've got to drink this milkshake because you're not full-bodied enough.
Oh my God.
It was disgusting. Anyway,
I love stories about your grandma. And she bullied Chuck McCann at the fighting.
Well, I've told you that she gave Louis Armstrong a shot in the butt, right?
No, you did tell me that.
She gave Louis Armstrong he came in for some shot and she gave it to him in the butt.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, she said he was like pretending to play the trumpet.
I was about to ask if he started scatting.
Yeah. Doobadoo,
whoa! The only man who sounds the same when he's playing trumpet and singing. Back to the disaster. Can we get back to that?
Yeah. No, it was really a disaster. It was for my grandma. They didn't have strawberry.
I gotta gain weight on vanilla. They'll know. The men will know. In Long Beach and the surrounding areas, 30 mass feeding stations were arranged by the Red Cross, set up to feed 83,000 people daily. God. The LA chapter of the Red Cross set up information stations to connect friends and relatives who lost communication. So, like, if you show up, like, I don't know where my buddy Bob is, you can go to the station, which is incredibly helpful at the time. They were also able to raise...
Use Facebook. Did they check in on Facebook?
You can Google his whereabouts, right? You can follow him on a map, which is terrific. They were also able to raise over $400,000 for the relief effort to go towards repairing homes and businesses. Within a few days, schools were being rebuilt, and classes for most schools, elementary schools to college, were being held in tents. Some high school students held classes on bleachers. Church services were held in parks. The post office became an outdoor post office on 7th near American Avenue. Fire stations were reestablished in other buildings. The Long Beach Public Library brought reading materials to people camping in Lincoln Park. Do you have anything else? No.
I don't want to pay the fine on this book.
We'll tally it up with the effort, okay? Just read the book.
Bill it to the Red Cross.
Yeah. A few weeks later, homes and businesses were inspected for safety, and people that had any property standing were allowed to re-enter. Congress was able to give $500 million in the form of low-interest loans to help in the relief. March 26, 16 days later, a memorial was held in Bixby Park for the 51 residents of Longbeach who died. Over 15,000 people gathered there to pay their respects. There are a few interesting things that came out of the Longbeach earthquake of 1933.
Snoop Dogg.
First and least importantly, the Longbeach earthquake was the first earthquake recorded by the new technology accelerographs, which is a recorder that reads the acceleration of the ground. Second, when the quake was happening, it was felt all over LA. Pasadena shook some, and out of a building at Caltech ran a guy carrying all of his gear. He was not running out of the building because of fear. This man was Charles Richter.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was...
Charles Thomas?
No, JPL.
Touch Myself in the Bushes?
Yeah, Jim Parsons.
Yeah.
Jack Parsons.
Jim
Parsons. Bazinga! Jack Parsons went running out, horny as ever, shaking alive.
It's happening! I touched myself hard enough that it's happening!
Really? Charles Richter?
Charles Richter ran outside. Also known, for anybody who doesn't know, the man behind the Richter scale, which is now how we measure the strength of earthquakes. Wow. Charles Richter, also known as the master interpreter of earthquakes.
This is a 6.4. This is a 6.4.
Is it rolling or is it bouncing? It was just all these nerds.
The same thing Jack Parsons was yelling.
He was at Caltech getting his PhD in physics at the time. Something like 2 years later, him and a guy named Benno Gutenberg developed the Richter scale. But here's another thing. Richter's running out.
It'll be about Snoop Dogg.
Someone very similar to Snoop Dogg. Richter runs out of the building at Caltech, probably giddy with excitement. And whose path does he cross? But a visiting speaker at Caltech, Albert Einstein, who apparently says... didn't even feel it because he was so involved in the discussion with a colleague.
I thought they were both running out. And he's like, E equals MC squares. 6.4 on a Richter scale. Two huge scientific advancements crossing each other.
I imagine Richter out, a box full of like beakers and like a ball that rolls a lot. He's like, oh boy, are you Albert Einstein? Oh boy. Just like runs right past him. I was so excited.
God, Albert Einstein was here to feel it.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's probably the same.
He was here to feel it.
This was for you, Albert. Yeah. We arranged this for you. That was probably the same trip he was here, that he was there at the premiere of City Lights or whatever. That's so weird. Big trip for Albert Einstein. He went back to Switzerland. I had the most authentic LA experience. I tried tacos. I had an earthquake. And I saw a premiere of a movie.
That's just some good LA lore for anybody out there who likes that stuff like I do.
That's so weird.
The truly great thing to come out of the 1933 quake was the California Field Act, named after Assemblyman Don Field. The Field Act upgraded seismic safety standards for schools throughout California and required many other jurisdictions to require masonry reinforcement. Safety codes are now implemented into the design of schools and other buildings. It's also called for continual inspections and oversights. And although many people find these restrictions incredibly strict, after reading about entire schools collapsing...
they're not relustrins. Get real, people.
Do me a favor. Anyone who thinks it's too strict, look at a photo of a school that's knocked down, and knowing that it happened at 5:54 and not 2:54, and be like, maybe we need those.
And let's see in the next story how well those restrictions held up.
Yeah. In 1933, the Long Beach earthquake that affected so much of South LA was a wake-up call to our city that we were not ready for seismic activity. If you're looking at an example of what would happen to LA if no preparation or even understanding of the danger we were in Southern California, 1933 quake is a perfect one to see how unprepared we were and how unaware of it we were.
How naive we were and how prepared we are now. And also in the 90s. And also in whatever the next one you're about to be talking about.
I'm going to roll right through this one.
Okay, what's the next one you have?
The San Andreas is the mighty crack that runs through California. And one day it'll hiccup and all of the state will be swallowed into the earth. But another concern are what are called blind faults. Blind because seismologists are either unaware of them or don't realize their potential destructive power.
Stepping on my fault line here.
It
seems our tectonic plates are bumping up against each other. We're bumping uglies here.
And if I read any research right, something bad's going to happen right now. Some rumbling's going to happen. Kiss me.
Something's rumbling all right.
I read somewhere.
I
read somewhere that there was a huge network of faults and fractures in the Earth's crust under the LA basin. And although they are smaller than the San Andreas Fault, their true destructive power lies in where they are located, directly underneath densely populated areas. One of these blind faults runs along the base of the San Gabriel Mountains above San Fernando Valley.
Here we
go. The area has many faults, but the one that we're going to be talking about is called the Sierra Madre Fault.
Not wrong about that part of town having a lot of faults. Certainly a lot of faults in that part of town.
Could find a lot of faults in the valley.
What?
9 miles below the surface.
A creature was awake.
His name, the Sierra Madre Fault.
Sierra Padre.
The Sierra Madre Fault, 9 miles below surface, is the one we're going to be talking about right now. Okay. Geologists might have known that the area had faults, but they didn't think that they were active. They would find out it was active on February 9th, 1971, a Tuesday, a weekday. Some people were awake when it hit, some people were asleep, but for sure, just before 6:01 a.m., everyone woke up when an earthquake was set off north of Sylmar.
I'm seeing I was going to say there's a pattern of like earthquakes happen at around 6 o'clock. That's
the earthquake witching hour.
Probably the twitching hour.
It measures at a 6.6 on the Richter scale, around the same shake as the 33 quake, and it lasts for 12 seconds. Do you want to count that?
Yeah, let's count that. Okay, hang on. Let me get a full circuit going. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's confusing because there's another clock going on, so it's
it's like a Thelonious Monk song. One of you guys is off, but it's good.
That's what makes it so good. That's that I can't play.
Neither can he. In that 12 seconds was the 1971 Sylmar earthquake. In that 12 seconds, according to Daily News article by Dana Bartholomew, bridges fell, freeways buckled and collapsed, sewer lines snapped, power lines came down, gas lines exploded, chimneys toppled over, walls crumpled, windows shattered, and people died. In houses, at work, on the road, in hospitals. All of you, the hospital in Sylmar, it had a new like 6-story facility. Literally like the whole facility, by the way, was a month old. January 9th was when they were like, it's ready. During the quake, it shifted a foot off its foundation and the first floor collapsed and killed 3 people. 1,000 patients were thankfully evacuated safely. If it had been during staff hours, which was at 8 a.m., it would have killed so many more people. Phone lines, electricity, elevators were all out at the hospital. 3 other hospitals in the area suffered considerable damage. We'll get to one of them, as did an electrical switching station, a converter station, the San Fernando Juvenile Facility, and a glass factory in Newhall, which is like the glass factory during an earthquake is pretty funny. They had like millions of dollars of damage.
It's almost as funny as being in a Jello factory. How was the Jello factory? Can we check in on the Jello factory?
Guys? Whoa! A line of Los Angeles County ambulances were crushed by a parking overhang. Schools collapsed, although I couldn't find too much info on that. The overpass of the 5 and the 210 at Sylmar was destroyed when a bridge fell on it and killed 2 people. If it was rush hour, so many more people would have been dead on the freeway. On the Newhall Pass interchange of the 5 and the 14, that collapsed for the first time.
And not the last.
The thing about reading about earthquakes, especially in like newspapers that are like looking back on it, is that you'll hear so many stories of people who lived through it, and everyone seems to have the same sort of like, it was shaking and I thought I was gonna die and it was loud and it ended. But like I want a list of all the places that were like, this fell down, but like they don't have that. But it'll like every paper will sum it up like schools collapsed. So like I couldn't find what schools in the valley collapsed. Schools collapsed.
Oh, what? Now you acknowledge that there are schools in the valley? So what, you pick and choose when you're sympathetic to the valley?
School of Hard Knocks.
What? What'd you say about my nuts? What the hell did you say about these nuts?
These nuts?
Oh, there's a mosquito in here. Must be a spy from My Favorite Murder. That's okay. Oh, it's making so much money. Oh, no.
It was insured. And they're going to pay even more.
Oh, no. It got picked up by another network.
They're going to do a murder of the moth. And it's going to be the greatest episode.
It's a mosquito from the Moth podcast. The irony.
Of the damages and losses, 2 things should be singled out. First, this one had no casualties, but it's like terrifying to think about.
Wait, this one had no
casualties. The situation had no casualties. The Van Norman Dam.
Yeah, I was going to mention.
Do you know where this is at?
Yeah, it's the one that they put all the little balls in to create shade.
Okay, that is in the Granada Hills, Mission Hill area near where you grew up.
It's right above like with the Odyssey.
Oh, okay. It's up. Oh, I got lost up there one time, above Rinaldi, right? Real close to us.
Kicking the dam. Yeah, it's just to the left of whatever 5 or whatever that is that goes up there.
The dam consists of 2 areas: the upper and lower reservoirs. Together, they hold 3.6 billion gallons of drinking water, which is about 80% of the LA water supply. There it is. Take it.
Yeah, that's where it all goes. Yeah, there it is. Take it. Water.
Yeah, the water slide that leads. Yeah. Part of the rim of the lower reservoir was concrete, but some of it was earth and dam, which seems to be like compacted dirt, sand, and clay, like an earthy embankment or a barrier. The earthquake hits, and the embankment loosens up and begins to give. 30 feet worth of barrier had broken off, and all that was left was about 6 feet before the surface of the water. A strong aftershock could have given the water just enough pushed to topple it, and once the weight of the water would have hit the remaining wall, it would have buckled. The water, I remind you, 3.6 billion gallons, became dangerously close to toppling the rim of the dam, but luckily, even with aftershocks, it didn't happen. No water gushed past whatever barrier was left, but like 80,000 residents within a 2 by 12 mile radius, like a rectangle radius, were evacuated. They had to leave their homes for 4 days after the earthquake, so the water levels had to be like lowered using pumps. A UCLA study on that found that if the dam collapsed, it would have killed between 71,000 and 123,000 people.
I read that it was 15,000.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
We want to try it right now?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go kick it open.
Let's see how many people died.
But what I read also was that they had just lowered the water level like 2 months before, and if they hadn't, that would have been it.
Yeah, that would have been it. Like the weight of the water would have killed all of those people.
There goes the valley.
Luckily, they lower the water.
You would love that, wouldn't you? You would love it. Say it.
Say it. I own a boat. I'd be fine. It didn't happen.
I live on a boat in the middle of Van Nuys, like Cliff Booth.
It didn't happen though. No lives were lost, but it scared a lot of people, including me reading it. The other location though is pretty heartbreaking. The San Fernando Veterans Administration Hospital, the VA hospital near Plummer and Haskell, was built in 1926, long before the Field Act codes were implemented. The structure consisted of a lot of concrete with tile walls. After the earthquake, the VA hospital was a pile of rubble with slanted frames.
The whole thing?
Pretty much. I think like a big portion of it.
The one that's
collapsed.
Like up on the hill above
I think so. I was trying to get a better idea of where it was.
I mean, that's the VA.
Yeah, it must be that in Sylmar. A lot of
Sylmar? Are you talking about the one in Sylmar or in North Hills?
Oh, Plummer and Haskell. I guess it's North Hills. You're right. Yeah.
Guess we proved who really lives in the valley.
People who live under dams. I live near a lake, which used to be a reservoir.
I live near a reservoir with no protection.
So the VA hospital came down. 44 people died there. In total, the earthquake would injure 2,500 people, cost more than $550 million in damages, and claim the lives of 64 people, 9 of which were due to heart attacks. Later, scientists would find the epicenter of the quake. They would find it and discover that at the area, put a bullet in it so it never happens again. So they go to the area where the quake happened, the epicenter. It had raised off the ground 5 feet, like the plate had lifted, and they found that the San Gabriel Mountains rose 2 to 3 feet. Mountains were built because of this. Immediately after the quake, though, it was rescue time. One of the benefits of the valley being hit in 1971 was there was adequate emergency rescue departments, the fire department, ambulances, police. There were enough departments there. Like a lot of people complained that there was a slow time, but like there were enough to help everybody. It wasn't like you were waiting for days. Also very fortunate was that the quake hit at 6 a.m., so people were in their homes, and because the valley was relatively new, the houses were built with reinforced structures to deal with a big shake already. Some homes cracked and windows shattered, but very few houses crumbled. If it happened 2 hours or even an hour later, the quake would have been devastating because everyone would have been out at work. Like they would have been in these buildings that weren't retrofitted the same as houses, so they probably would have come down. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people flocked to any emergency room they could find. Many going to any emergency room that they could find. Many going to Olive View, which had its second floor conveniently now located on the first floor. Not funny. So people were going to Olive View with injuries, and Olive View was trying to evacuate. They had managed to set up temporary facilities in an unused building at the site and then gave people first aid. Other people went to other hospital sites that hadn't fallen apart, or they went to like church emergency setups that had first aid. Valley residents had to endure weeks without water, gas, and power as the Salvation Army rolled out trucks of hot food. But life returned to normal after that for those people who could walk away with their lives. The quake scared the S word out of a lot of people. It was incredibly strong, but the fault was pretty much ignored or missed altogether, which was the most alarming thing, that there was a fault here and we had no idea that these series of faults could just be like activated. But from it, a new set of safety standards emerged from 4 hospitals, dams, freeways, and land use planning across California. In 1973, the state passed the Alquist Hospital Seismic Safety Act, which reinforced safety building codes to make sure that they could withstand a moderate quake. At the time, this was the 3rd worst earthquake in terms of casualties in California history. In front of that was the 33 earthquake, and heading the list was the big one, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which I keep being surprised when I read the death count was 3,000 people.
But that was most, well, I'll get into it.
It was the worst earthquake to hit the valley since the Newhall quake of 1893, which I didn't do too much research on. There was a lot of trouble after the quake between residents and different city and state departments. A lot of people complained about response time between Sheriff Peter Pitchess and the city. The sheriff wanted to call the National Guard to assist in areas that were hit hard. Then they found out that the sheriff was not getting the National Guard to do simple things like supply drinking water to people who had none. There was a lot of problems with like realtors and emergency funds and low-income loans and small business associations. this one on for years. Reading stories in different newspapers, it seemed like the quake was terrifying and the aftermath was long and frustrating. But were lessons learned? Let's find out in 30 years.
30 years?
71 to... Oh, that's right. 2 years. 20 years.
2 years.
It was 2 years.
Oh, what a fool I was. It's 2 years away.
Grandma, you haven't aged at all. It's 1991.
And you're as smoking hot as ever.
I have a thing about what you should do during an earthquake, and we say that for the end.
Yeah, I have some tips. We're just trying to save lives here. Tip number 1, always have a Pez dispenser. Okay,
scare the crap out of me.
Each time they're like, well, we learned our lesson this time. We've got codes. We're safe from now on.
We're going to keep an eye on these building codes.
Now we understand that there's faults. And each one that hits, the city's getting more and more populated.
Yeah.
So the stakes are getting higher and higher.
Absolutely.
This is the big one. But not really the big one. Early morning, a little past 4, wiggles ring out in the Northridge sky.
What song is that supposed to be?
It's a U2 song. It's the one about Martin Luther King being assassinated.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I made a parody of it. So just a few seconds earlier, on January 17th, 1994, reality as usual. Everything's the same. We were all asleep in our beds with our dinosaur nightlights going and completely dry matching dinosaur pajamas. Then the clock hit 4:30 and 55 seconds a.m. January 17th, 1994, and the entire city changed forever.
Can you stop there? I kind of don't want you to go further.
Is that when you first wet yourself? At that exact moment, a previously unknown fault line centered 10 miles below somewhere along Arminta between Reseda and Wilbur in Reseda.
Wow.
Catastrophically cut the cheese. This is a street we know.
Yeah.
These are all, well, you and I know.
Yeah.
That was one thing. Driving here tonight to record this at an undisclosed location in Northridge, I was passing like, okay, so I'm driving over the fault line right now. That's where this triage was. That's where headquarters was.
Yeah.
That's where the biggest catastrophe happened. That's where the thing fell down. Like every single...
same thing too, yeah.
Like you were talking about, this unknown fault line, blind thrust fault, it shows no features on the surface. So there was no way for anybody to know this. This is now called the Northridge or Pico thrust. It's 10 miles long, stretching up towards Chatsworth from Reseda. This fault ruptured for 7 full seconds. So that's not 7 seconds of shaking. That's 7 seconds of ripping. Do you want to count 7 seconds of ripping?
This is just ripping.
This is just ripping.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thelonious Monk clock is really throwing me off. So that's 7 seconds of ripping. It shook for 15 seconds. You want to count 15 seconds now?
15 seconds.
This is turning into an episode of Sesame Street.
1.
Okay, 15 seconds. This is how long the Northridge earthquake shook us for.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
That's constant shaking you're feeling. And it was shaking horizontally and vertically.
Oh.
So it's like...
it's a jackhammer, but you're also being pushed.
Yeah.
Being shoved
it's
by
a
bullet.
jackhammer on a trampoline. It ruptured south to north, so from Reseda towards Chatsworth, with the fastest acceleration of power shot out towards Tarzana, and the fault line hit closest to the surface, right where that not dry for much longer dinosaur boy was sleeping, Granada Hills, the Valley, California. That's where it hit.
You were so close to it.
I was not under the epicenter. I was apparently under, in particular, my bed. Yeah. It was where it hit closest to the surface.
How old were you?
I wasn't born yet. I was like negative 14. I was born.
And I lived a life, and it's not no one's business to know when
I was born out of the internet. Yeah, I was 6 years old at that time.
Okay.
So this was prime trauma age.
Yeah.
So to give an idea of how much energy is released in an earthquake, a magnitude 5 is equivalent to the bomb that hit Hiroshima. A 6 is enough energy to launch the space shuttle 2 million times. So what hit under Reseda that morning was a 6.7.
Oof.
Bigger than Sylmar, bigger than Longbeach. This isn't the biggest magnitude to ever hit, but it made the strongest ground motions ever recorded by instruments in an urban setting in North America. It's not the number of the magnitude.
It's the way that you use it.
Yeah, it's the girth of the magnitude.
I remember it being incredibly loud. Freight train loud.
Let's talk about our memories right now, because some things I remember, I then learned what was happening from doing this research.
Okay.
Let me hear yours, because I'm curious, because you were in Echo Park at the time.
Yeah. So I was far from it. Not close, but it was still incredibly powerful. I was in the living room. Mondo was in the living room. It started shaking. My parents were right there, so they got us up. We all 5 of us got under a doorway, and it was
you're
just
not supposed to do.
No. Oh, well, we know that now.
We all got under our porcelain doorway.
And it was just like insanely loud. Everything was falling down. I remember that too. And then my mom pulled my baby brother out of the crib and she said something to make sure he was okay. And she realized that she was holding him upside down and she was talking to his butt.
I remember this story. Yeah. This was on the front page of the Daily News.
Yeah, that was...
Woman talks to butt. Oh, yeah, some shaking happened. For me, I wet the bed.
Hell yeah.
I must have...
Me every day, all right?
It's a 6.7 in my bed every night.
And there's flooding too, right, Mom? Mom?
You must have been crying because of the earthquake and you wet my pants. I wet the bed. I must have been crying. There's no way I wasn't crying. And I was screaming out. I remember the sky was red. I looked outside and the sky was red, and we'll find out why. Uh-huh. But other than the exact moment, I really don't remember a lot. I remember the aftermath of just stuff. Like stuff everywhere, like everything on the floor.
Yeah.
And I remember when the electricity finally came back, there was a lamp that was like shattered on the floor and it turned back on. I was like, hey,
it works.
We're going to be all right.
Starts a small fire.
And we never cleaned anything up. Why bother? It's going to happen again. So by 10:30 a.m., there was already a name for this massive earthquake that hit under Reseda, the Northridge earthquake. I don't know why they called it the Northridge earthquake.
They knew right away where.
Yeah, we got to brand this thing. Let's go through snapshots of the destruction that this caused. And keep in mind, as I list each of these things, all of this happened at the same time. Yes. I haven't dislodged from space and time yet, so I have to list these in a numeric list. But these were all happening at the same time. I'll start towards the epicenter and move outwards. One of the parking structures and part of the Bullock's department store at the Northridge Mall collapsed. Over at CSUN, parking lot C on Zelza collapsed. The University Tower Apartments, also on Zelza, collapsed. The Science Building caught on fire. The east and west wings of the Oviatt Library fell down. So did the South Library and the Fine Arts Building. Meanwhile, in Granada Hills, all the Keebler cookies my parents kept hidden from me on top of the refrigerator flew all over the floor. I remember that very clearly. There were Keebler, chocolate fudge Keebler elves everywhere. Exposed and vulnerable for a little boy who had just wet himself. My biggest memory, like I said, aside from those cookies, it was the sky was red. And I always thought I imagined that, but now I know this is why that happened. Around Balboa and Rinaldi, the street ripped open and a water main broke, and that shot a geyser of water into the sky. But water isn't red. Then a gas main broke and mixed gasoline with the water, and then a guy who didn't know what just happened drove his truck into the hole, which ignited the gas, so a fireball shot 100 feet in the sky, which must have been what I saw.
Oh my God.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. Right, and you didn't hear any of that.
No, I was too busy screaming. But yeah, that must have been...
This is the beginning of Gravity's Rainbow, by the way. Go ahead.
5 houses around that caught on fire. Balboa was pretty much a river of water that was also on fire at some parts of it. It was just leaking and burning. I was doing half of that. In Chatsworth, a 24-car train was traveling down the tracks at the time, and wouldn't you know it, it was carrying 2,000 gallons of sulfuric acid.
Oh, it was carrying nuclear bombs.
Yeah,
and cows with knives.
This is a calculus word problem. The train derailed and spilled all the acid, causing a cloud of sulfuric acid hovering around the train tracks. And things were so catastrophic in the valley that the cloud of sulfuric acid wasn't an immediate priority. And again, this is all happening at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
Parts of the Woodland Hills Kaiser collapsed. Several buildings in Sherman Oaks either collapsed outright or caught on fire. One of the most horrific things happened on the road between Sylmar and Santa Clarita. The 5 and the 14 freeway overpass, the same exact spot, sheared off completely. An LAPD officer named Clarence Wayne Dean was on his way to work on his motorcycle at the moment this happened and didn't see that the road was missing, and he flew 40 feet to his death off the edge of that.
That's it. That's the scariest thing.
That's one of the scariest things.
Yeah.
Also caught in the rubble of the crumbled 14 was a 7-month pregnant woman who was crushed inside her car when the 5 fell on top of it. She was saved though, but first of all, what is she doing out 7 months pregnant at 5 in the morning?
Trying to get pickle
juice
one last whatever pregnant women like to.
I need pickle juice. I need pickle ice cream.
You know how bad I needed? 4 in the morning bad.
So there were rock slides all along the Santa Susana Mountains, and the earthquake raised them another 15 centimeters, the Santa Susana Mountains. Several buildings along Hollywood Boulevard collapsed. Santa Monica Hospital was severely damaged, as was part of the Santa Monica Freeway near La Cienega. Fires broke out in Venice and Malibu. The Memorial Coliseum cracked. Fires broke out in South Central. Landslides broke out at Castaic Lake. A Jumbotron fell and crushed 800 seats in Angel Stadium in Anaheim. People felt rumbling in Las Vegas, Nevada, Richfield, Utah, and Ensenada, Mexico. This all happened around 15 in the same 15 seconds.
Insane.
Streets were flooded, sometimes also on fire. Parking structures fell on top of thousands of cars. Cars that were driving literally jumped off the road because they was thrown up.
Yeah.
People were physically thrown out of bed. The 5, 10, 14, 118, and 210 freeways were either partially or completely off limits. Yeah. Several people died in car crashes. One lady fell out of bed, died of an aneurysm. Several lost the power to their home respirators and died. One guy got electrocuted to death by a downed power line. One guy downtown freaked out and jumped out of the window of his 6th floor apartment to his death. 2 people were buried alive under books. They were killed. A microwave fell on top of a guy and killed him. People who saw the valley just after this initial chaos, they just saw pitch black land with dust rising over it like a fog and occasionally explosions from power transformers.
That's hell. This is all hell on earth.
You could have looked away. If you were standing on top of the mountains, you could have been like, hey, I think there's a shooting star. Where'd the valley go?
Yeah. As I hover in a bubble above this spot.
I felt nothing. I must have been talking with Albert Einstein. I didn't feel anything. Here's where my trigger warning kicks in here.
That didn't need a trigger warning?
I probably should have had a trigger warning there also. But this one, double trigger. The worst nightmare unfolded in Northridge at a place called Northridge Meadows. It was a 3-story, 163-unit apartment complex at 9565 Reseda Boulevard, right next to CSUN. It's right near, it's across from that post office near where the donut shop and the lady kept calling you Craig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's right over there behind the homicidal crab or whatever the Cajun place is called. So to best illustrate what happened, I'll tell you one particular story. One guy's grandma lived on the 1st floor at Northridge Meadows, so he drove over to make sure she was okay, and he went to her window. But when he looked inside, he didn't recognize any of the furniture, and then he realized the building had somehow lost a floor. Like in Sylmar, what had happened was the entire 1st floor got crushed by the other 2 floors, and this 3-story building was now a 2-story building. So there was no longer a 1st floor, and everyone who lived on that floor was either lucky enough to be alive and stuck in their apartment, which is horrific, often pinned under furniture, or were either killed instantly or slowly crushed to death. That was your those are your 3 options in Northridge Meadows. 1 minute after the initial quake, a 5.9 hit and pushed the building down even further. So if you were crushed, if you had 12 inches. Now you got 10 inches. Some survivors were stuck in there for 6 hours. One guy was stuck between a filing cabinet and the ceiling, with each aftershock brought the ceiling down on him more and more. Horror. Absolute horror.
You're right. That is the worst.
Some people had as little as 18 inches of room for hours. One kid had to listen as his 3 roommates were slowly crushed to death. Many who were able to get out of their apartments became heroes, saving whoever they could find. Again, there's so many heroes in this story. People from the building next door used ladders from their building to the meadows to get people out. One guy named Eric Pearson, who lived in the meadows, was an emergency medical technician. He saved many, many people. But when people said, like, you're a hero, he said, I don't feel like a hero because I had to see 5 people dead. Horrible. Northridge Meadows showed the best in people during this whole thing, but it also showed the worst damage that happened. In all, 16 people died inside this building. Most of them were older people who were living on the 1st floor so they didn't have to deal with stairs. But one woman lost not only her husband, but her 14-year-old son on the 1st floor of this building. So because the Northridge Meadows part of this story is so horrific, I have to tell you one story that came out of it for a glimmer of hope. A guy who lived there named Mike Kubaizi had 6 of his friends die in that building. That's not the nice part. He kept going, though, and he saved 5 people from their apartments. One of them was a woman named Trish, who he had never met and was so scared she couldn't bring herself to leave her apartment, but he coached her out through it and got her out of there safety. Mike and Trish went on to get married. They're still together today. Perfect. It's a nice little story.
That's a nice little thing to add on
that. Now back to the carnage. I'm
not ready.
Some 82,000 buildings were either damaged or destroyed, including 7,000 houses, 5,400 mobile homes, and 49,000 apartment buildings, making for a total of 450,000 living units damaged. 6,000 commercial or industrial buildings were damaged, 4,000 municipal buildings, 9 parking structures fell, 9 hospitals were evacuated, 200 steel high-rises cracked, 7 freeway bridges collapsed, and another 250 were damaged from the initial quake or one of the 14,000 aftershocks that happened afterward. Most of them were imperceptible, but over 300 of them you could feel, including one that was over a 6 magnitude that happened 11 hours later. So it doesn't stop.
This one doesn't count. Aftershock.
This one's a buy.
80%
of the damage was in the valley, with the strongest forces hitting within 30 miles of the epicenter, but the worst places hit were the North Valley and Sherman Oaks, but also Santa Clarita, West Hollywood, and San Santa Monica due to the shape of the fault system and also the soil type and the age of the buildings in those areas. All causes accounted for. 72 people were killed that day, 33 from fallen buildings, 30 from heart attacks, the rest from various injuries. The youngest victim was Amy Tyre Vigil in Sherman Oaks. She was 4 years old. There was also an outbreak of something called coccidioidomycosis.
Say it right.
Cox. No, this is a Patreon person. I don't have to pronounce their name right. It became known afterwards as Valley Fever, which was caused by inhaling all the fungus spores that were in all the buildings and got knocked loose. So this also killed a few people.
That's awful.
11,846 people were injured, 10,558 of them in LA County, mostly in the East Valley, 1,284 in Ventura County, 4 in Orange County. On day one, 466 fires broke out. All of them were put out.
More fires than there are days in the year.
Yep. All of them were put out within 5.5 hours, but new fires popped up and went into the night, and even more started when the power started coming back on, and they sparked all those loose wires.
I saved the day. I turned the electricity back on. Oh, no.
Oh, look, a shooting star. Where'd the valley go again? The firefighters and first responders and the DWP people, they were valiant, and I've never described a DWP worker that way. They sprung into action immediately to assess the damage and get people to safety and get the utilities up and running again as quickly as they could. Unfortunately, in this situation, not very quick. It would take a while. Because of the damage to the roads getting into the valley and the time of day that this happened, in the first few hours, there were only about 50 firefighters who were able to get onto the street helping people. Several firehouses couldn't get their doors open to get the trucks out because there was no power and the mechanisms got damaged. So they were stuck.
Yeah.
This meant that they had to literally, the 50 that were out there had to drive past people begging and crying for help because they had to prioritize what they deemed to be the most urgent situation. Like I said, the cloud of sulfuric acid in Chatsworth was not at the top of the list. Yeah, it's just an acid cloud going around. Places like Northridge Meadows needed the most attention, even though they initially drove past it, not realizing that the mostly normal looking 2-story building used to be a 3. They were like, oh, there's nothing too bad there. It's missing a whole floor. The biggest priority was stopping the fires because they knew that the past earthquakes, like the ones that hit San Francisco or Tokyo, most of the destruction was caused by fires that broke out and swept through the entire city. Like you see those pictures of San Francisco where it's just like smoking rubble. Yeah. An earthquake doesn't do that. Fire does that.
You're right, yeah.
They were determined not to let that happen. The problem was so many water lines had broken that there was no water pressure. There was nothing coming out of the hydrants, and there were also 25-mile-per-hour winds blowing. As one of the guys put it, everything failed.
I just need the wind to stay still for no.
As long as it stays under 24 miles per hour. I don't know how they did it, but this barely double-digit squad of firefighters managed to get things under control and prevent what could easily have been most of or all the valley being burned to the ground.
Heroes.
Eventually, help was able to get through, and a command center was set up at Nordhoff and Reseda in the Vaughn's parking lot. They saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives and got them to the medical assistance they needed, which unfortunately most hospitals could not provide.
Yeah.
Like I said, most of the hospitals were damaged, and several were not even safe to enter. The VA in North Hills couldn't go in there. Holy Cross in Mission Hills, all of you in Sylmar completely shut down. Surgeries were canceled. Hospitals, several had to be evacuated. The county psychiatric hospital had to move all of its patients. The Northridge Hospital and a few others set up triages in their parking lots. The Granada Hills Community Hospital was operating with no heat or water. 21 premature babies had to be airlifted to functioning hospitals. A few women went into labor early from the trauma, and several of them lost the babies. Eventually, more doctors, nurses, and psychiatrists were brought in as part of federal relief, and the Red Cross set up at Birmingham High School. But the first few hours and days, again, heroes, local heroes. There was even one guy who had a school bus who was going around evacuating people to places like this. Yeah. But remember all those homes that were damaged? Yeah. That meant that 125,000 people were now homeless, which is now just another day in Los Angeles, but it was crazy back then.
Yeah, 94, that is enough to make a headline.
When everyone had a house. And even more were too afraid to go back into their houses because
that's where all the scary stuff happened.
Yeah, exactly. It could happen again, and it was happening. It happened 14,000 more times. I think my family, I'm pretty sure we lived in a car for a little bit. Yeah. I don't remember most of what happened. It must have been really bad, but I remember those cookies.
I think we had people move in with us at the house after the quake.
Is it me?
That's how I know you. That's why we're
You adopted
friends.
My family.
Put them to work.
Replant my begonias. So then even more people who did want to go back into their houses couldn't because all the buildings had to be inspected first to make sure they were safe. So then there were 48,500 homes without water, 20,000 without gas, and another 9,000 without electricity. There were temporary water stations for people to fill up jugs, mobile phone booths since nobody had phones back then. 15 neighborhoods became ghost towns with 90% of their housing damaged or evacuated, and actual ghosts moved in. This meant that a lot of people were living in makeshift shelters, or if there wasn't room, they were just camping out in parks across the city for days. The National Guard came in and set up tent cities in Winnetka Recreation Park, Lanark Park, a few others, but some were just sleeping in sleeping bags in parks in like San Fernando and stuff like that. The National Guard was there to help out with things like that, but mostly just to deter any potential looters. So they put out a curfew also, and there's very little looting, which I'm surprised by. And there were only 73 arrests, and most of those were just curfew violations. People needed their pickle juice. Mayor Reardon had declared a state of emergency an hour after it hit, and by that afternoon, President Clinton had declared what had happened in LA County a national disaster. Big Bubba himself, he came to visit on January 19 and groped his way through the rubble.
He took over. Louis Armstrong wasn't in the story. He was in another story, but saxophone man to the rescue.
He played trumpet. And Louis Armstrong was only a senator. The way you knew this was an earthquake in Los Angeles was that people on the side of the road were selling shirts of the earthquake map on them.
Yep.
And light up balloons shaped like not Mickey Mouse. There was also a lot of community therapy going on because people were traumatized and scared to go back to their normal lives because it could hit again at any second. Yeah. Apparently, me and my sister were in some group therapy, but I don't remember that either, so I guess it worked.
How did you find out?
I found out just like a few weeks ago. My mom was like, yeah, you and your sister were in, we sent you to a group therapy.
Yeah, regressive memory therapy.
Yeah. Turned out it was aliens. I remember that much. Aliens did it. A lot of people moved out of the more built up parts of town, and some left California completely. Yeah. So now we know the extent of the damage, but at what literal cost? Modern estimates of the damage are around $41.8 billion, with $2 billion of that just being water damage. And then on top of that, another $49 billion in economic losses. And the city only got $8 billion in federal aid for the 681,000 people and businesses that were applying for it. It's like you'll each get 20 cents. CSUN took somewhere between $250 to $350 million in damages. And that parking structure that collapsed was only 3 years old when it collapsed, and it's just now reopening.
2020.
Yep, just in time for the next one. This was the biggest quake to ever hit LA County, and the cost of it was more than the previous 50 years worth of earthquakes, storms, wildfires, floods, and landslides combined.
Yeah.
It cost more than that. It was also the first earthquake to hit directly under an urban area in the U.S. since the Longbeach earthquake in 1933. I guess they don't consider at the time Sylmar to be an urban area because it wasn't as built up. So yeah, take that, Sylmar. The rest of the valley's cool. It was the most expensive one to hit California since San Francisco in 1906. And on top of that, it was the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history, which was a proud title we held until 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Darn it. The
South will rise again. And it did. But here's the thing. Like you were saying, this could have been so much worse. We should be making sacrifices to the fault line every day of our lives for how lucky we are that when it hit when it did and where it did and the way it did. First off, it was 4 a.m. Most people were still home asleep. It was also Martin Luther King Day.
That's right.
So if this happened at 5 p.m. Tuesday, it would have been catastrophic. It would have been horrible. We would probably all have known somebody or had ourselves been killed that day. Yep. Second, the way that the fault ruptured sent most of the energy north towards the mountains because it split south to north. But if it had split north to south, all that energy would have shot towards downtown LA and devastated everything in between. Third, as unprepared as we were still more prepared than we would have been had it not been for the Sylmar earthquake. Yes. So building codes were stricter, and this was their first major test. And as bad as it was, a lot of stuff held up well, or at least better than it could have. There's the Van Norman thing. So they reinforced the Van Norman since that because it could have been
so much worse.
Very, very bad. It could have been the St. Francis Dam, but in the city.
Yeah.
The fourth thing was that the magnitude of the Northridge earthquake, again, it really wasn't that big. In 1993, there were 141 different earthquakes in the 6 to 7 magnitude range worldwide. This was only the 15th strongest earthquake in California history. The one that hit Ridgecrest this past July was way stronger than this. It was just so destructive because it hit right under an urban area. And also this particular fault shook, again, vertical and horizontal. But if this had been as strong as the one they're promising we'll get real soon, it would have been, again, bad stuff. One major way people were unprepared here was that they didn't have insurance.
Oh, yeah.
People didn't have insurance. About 67% of the losses were uninsured because nobody really thought to get earthquake insurance. What was even worse was that the people who did plan ahead and bought plans got screwed because a lot of the companies couldn't afford to pay out so many policies at once.
Yeah.
The final victim of the earthquake was a guy who killed himself after his insurance company refused to pay out to help rebuild his life that was ruined. Not long after, a new law was passed requiring insurance companies to offer earthquake policies, but the risk was so great that a lot of these companies just stopped offering new policies completely or closed. So no new insurance policies available meant that people couldn't get mortgages to buy houses that required you to have an insurance policy.
Yeah.
This caused that famous drop in the housing market everyone's hoping for after this next big one, but they probably won't happen again because another result of the Northridge earthquake was that the California Earthquake Authority was formed as a publicly run entity to offer basic earthquake insurance coverage to anybody. But other than just insurance policies, a lot of new laws were passed to try to make the city safer for the next time, which is happening. In 1995, a law was passed that water heaters needed to be properly strapped down. Buildings are now made fundamentally different, though, with more regard to how each floor connects to the other floor. Like, they didn't even think about that before. There's now way better fault mapping technology than there was then. In 1994, there were 3 stations in all of Southern California monitoring plate movement. Today, there's over 250. So while it took them 45 minutes to determine the magnitude of the Northridge earthquake, it takes 2 minutes. It would take that little amount of time today. Our technology's even gotten so good that it's being used all over the United States. What we developed, what I developed.
Since I peed my pants that day, what I've been developing.
It's so good that it has revealed a lot of scary truths about what's lying underneath this city. We now know that there's a ton of unknown faults that, like these ones, across LA. Scariest of all is what's called the Puente Hills Fault, which runs under East LA, that has the potential to cause a 7.2 directly under downtown.
If downtown's hit as an epicenter,
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. We also learned that parts of the city you wouldn't expect, like Sherman Oaks and Santa Monica, were hit so hard because since they're both, here's that word again, they're right next to water, liquefaction happens, which is when it's so saturated. It's soil, it's saturated, but even though it's solid soil, it moves like liquid water in an earthquake. Imagine that. Imagine the earth turning to liquid. Liquefaction happened in my pants also.
I keep thinking about in the valley, that pothole in Sherman Oaks that car drove into.
Oh, yeah, the sinkhole?
The sinkhole, and it just makes me think of like how loose the area is underneath us, where it just like, there's a hole and a house can fall into it.
Don't live by water anywhere in this city, but which is easy because there's not much.
So don't live anywhere in LA.
This led to better zoning rules that recognize these the Californication dangers. This process is so slow. They're still retrofitting 7,000 miles of water lines to prevent them from rupturing next time. They say it's going to take 120 years to fully prepare LA's water pipes for the big one. In 2008, which was 14 years after Northridge, they just started the Great Shakeout drill to get people prepared for what to do when an earthquake hits. That started here, but it's now used all over the world. It wasn't until 2014, 20 years after Northridge, that Eric Garcetti and Lucy Jones formally put forward an earthquake preparedness plan. It took 20 years that provided for backup water systems for the firefighters, an emergency citywide solar-powered Wi-Fi network, and most importantly, retrofitting. The soft story buildings, like the type that Northridge Meadows was, it showed just how vulnerable of a design they were during an earthquake. So in 2014, there were 12,865 of these buildings around the city that were mandated for a retrofit. That program didn't start till 2015, and they gave them till 2022 to finish that. Only about half of these are done. My building just got finished, and my building's from like 1950. Like I said, it's made of pretzels, and I've eaten most of them. But that's really the only retrofitting plan that's put into action, which is scary. There's a lot of bigger, older buildings around town that are not up to code, and there's no mandates for any of these. Northridge hit during the construction of the Getty Center, and they were using this type of material and method that they swore was earthquake-proof. This is unsinkable, uncrackable, this building.
Built by the Titanic Company.
Yeah, built by Cunard Lines. After they assessed the damage, they found that 6 of the 80 steel joints in the building were damaged.
Oh, great.
So this uncrackable, there are buildings that have been using this type of method all over the city that were damaged, but there's still no mandates for steel buildings outside of West LA and the Valley. Scary to think.
It's upsetting me.
There's some skyscrapers downtown that might have been damaged by Northridge that we aren't even aware of.
It just needs a good push.
Yeah. Yep. Joker. On top of that, some of the freeways still aren't safe. The 514 interchange that had collapsed in the exact same way during the Sylmar earthquake. After the Sylmar earthquake, they rebuilt it the exact same way and said it's now earthquake proof. And then it collapsed the exact same way. Then after Northridge, they rebuilt it the exact same way.
Don't go on that.
Never go towards Victorville or wherever that takes you. They eventually retrofitted it though, so we'll see.
Just put a bunch of pillows underneath. Yeah, that's the best I could do.
Maybe if we slather it in CBD oil. Maybe if we just pour a bunch of CBD oil on the fault line, it'll relax. It's now named after the officer who died there, a memorial to him. They've also been testing an early warning Shake Alert LA app that came out in 2019, and then the Ridgecrest one happened, and it turned out it didn't work.
Great.
And even if it did, those would only be useful to people outside of the epicenter because computer data travels faster than the movement of a fault line. Right. So they're like racing to get to you. God, yeah. And by the time you like look at your phone, like, oh, an earthquake, boom.
Yeah.
So as prepared as we may be or think we are, we still have a long way to go and not a lot of time. As Garcetti put it, we're better prepared for the big one than any big city in America, which is to say we're woefully underprepared. Only about 13% of people in California have earthquake insurance, and the big one is supposedly coming.
They've been saying that forever.
They've been saying it.
You know what that means is that it's actually coming now.
Nah. I'm just going to keep running towards this cliff. I guess the idea of being overdue isn't really true because fault lines by their nature are not predictable.
Yeah.
So something could happen at any time of any magnitude anywhere, which is even worse. It's just like saying we're not overdue is just like a weird philosophical debate. Like it's coming. It's just you're using the wrong terminology. That being said, the likelihood of a 6.7 in the next 30 years is 60%. The likelihood of a 7 is 46%. And the likelihood of a 7.5 is 31%.
I'm going to need it to be lower.
I'm pretty sure those numbers are only getting higher. The big one scenario refers to the San Andreas Fault, which historically has split around every 150 years. And the last one, like we said, was 1857. So we're about 13 years late for that one. This runs under Palm Springs, and worst case scenario would unleash a 7.8 that would head straight towards Los Angeles. This would be 44 times stronger than Northridge, and if it hit at the wrong time, it could kill, this number seems low, but it said 2,000 people. I feel like it's a lot more than that. It would cost $200 billion in damages. That's an accurate number. It would affect all of Southern California. It would take decades to recover from. It could cause fires to break out that would devastate massive sections of the city. It could take up to 3 days for outside help to arrive, which means don't count on it. Here's where we get to the preparation part. Be prepared.
Thank you. Let's walk now.
Here's my advice. Move. All I have is have a kit with enough water for 10 days. Don't hang anything above your bed that could crush you in your sleep, although maybe that might be good. Don't have anything outside your door that could fall and block your exit. During an earthquake, go under something and hold on. Don't go in a doorway. If you're in bed, stay in bed and cover your head with a pillow. If you're in a car, pull over, park, stay in your car, put the parking brake on. If you're in a tsunami zone, get to high ground as soon as it's safe. If you're in any other situation than those I just listed, we can't help you. But if listening to this podcast is the preparation steps you've taken, you are not going to last very long in the wasteland.
No, just stay away from power lines if you're outside. Get under something sturdy if you're inside. If you're under debris, they say if you luckily have a whistle. But if you try to scream too much or like do other things to get people's attention, like try to tap if you can, if you have the room to, because you might breathe in some dust and fumes that could kill you and harm you. So like try to make noise without using your oxygen.
Okay, God, what a scary scenario.
Yep. Drop, cover, and hold on is the best. It's across the board the best thing to do. According to the Red Cross, at a minimum, you should have the basic supplies listed below. Water, 1 gallon per person per day. Batteries for your Game Boy. Have like a series, like you want to finish all the Marios because you have time because you're trapped under a file cabinet. Food, non-perishable, easy to prepare items, 3-day supply for evacuation, 2-week supply for home. A flashlight, battery-powered or a hand crank radio. What's that?
A vinyl record player.
Yeah.
A phonograph. A recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb by Alexander Graham Bell.
iPad that is fueled by your breath.
A gas-powered iPad.
Extra batteries, a deluxe family first aid kit, medications like at least 7 days worth, and medical items, multi-purpose tool, which I want to get, sanitation and personal hygiene items. I think they mean like tampons, and have those. Copies of personal documents like medication list, pertinent medical information, proof of address, a deed to your home if you can, passports. I don't know who would have people who run from their homes. Cell phones with chargers, and emergency contact information, extra cash, extra blanket, a map of the area. You can also add in like medical supplies like hearing aid batteries and glasses and contact lenses, baby supplies, games and activities for kids to shut them up, keep them from crying, pet supplies, 2-way radios, extra set of car keys and house keys, a manual can opener,
and the world's biggest backpack.
Yeah, and this list.
I've also heard of they have like the MR like meal ready to eat, like the just add water meals, and there's also like a straw that you can just like if you have to go to the river and drink out of it, and it filters it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I need that.
I'm sure it doesn't work. Like I'm sure when there's asbestos flowing down, I don't know.
My mom gave me a backpack for emergency earthquake stuff because she's
a doomsday prepper.
Yeah, she's Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2. So
she's making you do push-ups.
Yeah, exactly. She's making me lift assault rifles to make sure that I can in the new war. And she's always telling me to not park in parking structures. So like every day I'm like, I gotta stop parking structures. But like if I park outside of a parking structure, I'm just as dead anyway. So because if it falls down, it's probably gonna tilt and then hit my car. Then I'll be in listening to this podcast, being like, I need to get on lore. Yeah, those are the earthquakes of LA. Not all of them, but the big ones.
A lot of people I know now are like, and myself included.
I'm stronger than an earthquake and I could take it?
Yeah, I think if it starts shaking, I can shake harder.
Put my hands on it.
Shake, Felton Sonora.
I can put my hands on the ground and just stop.
How about we just talk to the earthquake? A lot of people are like, oh, the big one's going to hit and then we're all going to be able to afford houses again. First of all, you're going to die. But also, like I explained, the reason the housing prices went down is that nobody could buy houses. Yeah. So the market lowered the prices because of this insurance issue. But the insurance issue has been fixed. So it's not going to make it. Like maybe you can buy a broken house. Yeah. You can buy two houses that used to be one house.
Yeah. After the city's destroyed because everyone died in City Hall, you can pick a plot of dirt and be like, I live here now. Yeah. This is mine.
An earthquake's not going to be good and it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. No, it's going to be absolutely devastating because I feel like it's not going to happen at 4 a.m. or like, I mean, like
we've gotten too lucky. Yeah, three times now?
We've been very lucky that people were not as...
Imagine.
Yeah, I do all the time. Especially after reading this. This was not fun research for me. But, like, I read all of it because I have that thing where if something is scaring me and traumatizing me, I, like, dive headfirst into it. So if it's troubling to me, I can't walk away from it.
You want to go to group therapy for this episode?
Yeah. Is there a podcast that has group therapy we can go on?
It's WTF. I got a better alternative. I know where there's a bunch of Keebler cookies on the ground. My parents' old house. You know, I used to live here. I left something.
My dinosaur PJs. Ooh, that smell.
Okay, so let's do our listener question that we had promised. The big one still hasn't hit. I'm wondering. I guess we don't have as much clout in this city as I thought. Listener question again. Joanna Linkhorst.
Hi.
So this she sent me a long time ago, and I was like, how the hell am I going to answer this? How dare you?
You're trying to stump me. Make a fool of me on my own podcast? That's my job.
That's Greg's job. This is a poll. There is
about how stupid I am. And I asked everybody I know.
The results are in. Woof. There is a poll with what looks like a crow's nest on top of it on the west side of Corbin, just down from Devonshire. What is it? What's the deal? I looked this up on Google Maps, and then I was like, how am I going to, who am I going to contact? The poll authority? But then I happened to be going on this walk that shows you, like, there's this and this. And they pointed out one of those things. And I was like, I know. I came up with it all on my own. What you're looking at here is a typical World War II/Cold War era air raid siren, which we talked about in our live Valley Oddities episode. Mm-hmm. And that was, you've seen these all over the city. They were tested regularly in case of a Japanese or nuclear attack on the city. But this particular design, which is probably why she didn't recognize it, it's called a birdhouse style. It has this like a crow's nest around it. That one she's talking about is number 223. It was put up January 1st, 1940. The other styles they have, there's the rotating one, the wire spool one, and the flattened birdhouse.
Try to do a sound for each one.
Regular birdhouse, cuckoo, cuckoo. A rotating one, woo. A wire spool, and a flattened birdhouse, squish. They were tested monthly and placed around the city in clusters. When there were so few people around, you could identify populated clusters of the city. They were last used in 1985 to sound the arrival of Depeche Mode, and then they were retired forever. There's only some 200 of them left around the city because it's just cheaper to leave them up and take them down. But yeah,
that's good to know.
Yeah, it's just an air raid siren. You see them, now that you know they're there, you're going to notice them everywhere.
Yeah, I think since that episode, I noticed more.
Yeah, me too. Sirens. And I get excited each time. Like, that's an old thing from the past. That's a thing that's too expensive to tear down. They survived the earthquakes.
Yep.
Maybe we should all live in birds' nests.
Earthquakes. My house, I keep thinking like it lasts through that tough one, but like there's like a fault that goes through Elysian Park. I think that might be and that it's gonna put my house on
right
top
to your doorstep.
Yeah, it like split my house in half.
You're gonna be standing on either side, and you're gonna look down and then look behind you, and then you split in half. Here's something that leads right up to your doorstep. Jesus Christ. Us asking you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to.
Yes,
if you have an iPhone, search for us. You leave some 5 stars, leave some words. It helps us get more recognizable, more higher profile, and it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels darn good.
Good. I'd like to end this year with LA Meekly. That's it. No, I'd like to end the year with LA Meekly. Way more fans than we do. Every year we've been progressively getting more fans who want to get more involved with it, which is fantastic. But this is the year I want to really...
We got fan mail in the middle of this podcast by Madeline Pillar. We got your email in the middle of this, and we cut out the part where we read it because we made fun of you savagely. We made so much fun of you. And now we said your name on the podcast. That means you're a Patreon person. Give us money.
You're wonderful. Thank you so much for
very nice.
for writing to us. We always appreciate fan mail from anybody.
It's nice. Send us fan mail. Also, if you have a listener question,
please send those.
We'll answer it. I swear to God, if someone asks me what an air raid siren is again, I'm not answering that question for a third time.
Try to stump us. It'll be pretty easy.
Yeah, it only took 8 months for me to answer something I already knew the answer to. So if you have nice words for us or want to submit a listener question, email us at la.meekly@gmail.com.
Or if you're somebody that works at a place and you want us to do a field trip there, please let us know. We'd love to go.
Historic or interesting place, we'll come interview you. Or follow us and send us messages on Instagram, LA_Meekly, or Twitter at LA Meekly, Facebook. Like we said, on Patreon, you can support us for as little as just $1 a month. We'll say your name, just like we did. Or figure out when we record, send us an email right when we're recording, and we will say your name because we can't not address anything that happens to us.
After a pee break.
Yeah, after I cut out me going to furiously urinate.
Because I was talking about an earthquake that made me pee before.
It almost happened again. Fooled me once. And then until I was about 13.
We're working on right now more tiers for Patreon and stuff. So we're going to be having more things that you can get involved with.
Yeah, right now,
I'm very excited about.
If you're over the $5, we will send you a handwritten postcard every month, like I talked about, where I upset everybody at the underpaid city employee, underpaid national employee headquarters.
I got that Pony Express guide to quit.
And we're toying with the idea of a little short bonus thing for a certain level. Let us know if that's something you're interested in. Also, our shirts are available right now.
And they're very comfortable, and they have a really good design on them.
They're great shirts. They're beautiful shirts. They're so beautiful.
We'd love it if you wore it in public.
Don't just sleep
and explain to your friends what the shirt was about.
What the shirt. Yeah, wear them in public. I know they're really comfortable and you want to sleep in them, but both of our girlfriend, Melissa, everyone we know sleeps in it because it's so comfortable. Wear it out, okay?
Either that or we should come up with matching bottoms.
Yeah. Go against my catchphrase from the 90s. Wear it out. Coming soon, LA Meekly chinos. Sleep chinos.
You laugh? Great idea.
Yeah, you can buy our shirt. Let us know. They're $25, shipping included. You can message us anyway and we'll send it out to you. Yeah, scary episode.
That's been one of our scariest episodes.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some like the haunted stuff and things that are scary in different ways, but this is like, it's not like they're going, well, we're overdue for a Manson murder. Yeah. And this one's going to be...
We're over. That Charlie Manson guy seems kind of, I don't know.
Every 60 years.
This time it's going to be... member is going to take in some kids off the street. Mike Love brought home some hitchhikers off the 5 freeway, and now they brought some guy from San Francisco who refuses to wash his hair or leave.
This is something that we're promised. Mother Nature is promising us destruction.
And at a unpredictable time, with no warning whatsoever. Yeah. Everything that's above you will probably be at your feet if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, that's my plan for taking over Hollywood, sure, but...
It says that on my resume.
On my headshot. Yeah. There must still be something very deep inside of me that the trauma didn't, or the therapy didn't, smooth out. Yeah. Because whenever an earthquake does hit, it's so scary each time anew of how suddenly. Yeah. Like it goes from regular life to this could be it.
Yeah, this new reality which refuses to stop moving.
So again, be prepared.
The last one, I think it was the Ridgecrest one. I was at work. We built a stage at work for a band player Friday night, and we have like a bunch of people outside to watch them. And the quake hit while the band was on stage. But I was literally inside watching people outside feel it, and I didn't feel it. I was Albert Einstein this time for the first time ever, and not feeling it, but like feeling the social commotion was enough to scare me of like there's something coming.
Yeah,
and like that's scary.
And also it is when like the Ridgecrest. I'm regressing.
Oh no, baby, mommy,
can I have a key? What? I would like to eat a little elf now. It can hit you, and you can be shaking for a few seconds and be like, "Oh, I'm okay." Yeah. And then you could look at your phone and see, "Oh my God, Sylmar's gone."
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You don't know, like what you could be feeling could be the complete destruction of something else.
I've been listening to preparation. I've been listening to an audiobook about the San Andreas Fault. I think it's called like Earthquake Storm or something like that. The guy's so dry and like has almost no humor, and he's saying there's a common myth that San Andreas Fault will erupt or rupture and the state of California will just fall into the ocean. That's not quite accurate. What will happen is it'll break into several pieces that drift off and become islands. That's just as bad! The ocean's the scary part.
What, you don't want to live on an island now?
Ooh, beachfront property in Echo Park.
All that seaweed I can be using to make my sushi. My sushi business is going to take off.
Figured it out.
I think I'm turning Japanese.
I really think so.
And on that note, hey, have a good March.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't hit in March.
Yeah, it look really bad on us.
Yeah.
Or really good.
They summoned it.
Those two witches from a Shakespeare play on L.A. Meekley, they summoned it.
Can I have my eyeball back? So yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in...
April.
We'll see you in April, and then we'll literally see you in April at our 22nd. Live show.
Yeah.
We what?
We love you, listeners.
You've never said that to me before.
You're right.
You've never told me you loved me before.
You're right.
Feels good. We'll talk to you in a little bit. Be prepared. Tight. Be prepared. Don't get murdered. Oh, that mosquito's back. That's been yet another episode of Ellie Meekley.
Overdue for wetting our pants since 2013. Oh, it's happening right now, isn't it?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
My socks are wet.
You accidentally jiggled the microphone, and I thought it was happening. I was just preemptively. Your chances of survival are much better if you wet yourself.
Here, use my face to clean it up.